Good morning, and welcome, welcome, welcome to the First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the Spirit and serve the community. I am Reverend Lane-Mairead Campbell, and it is my privilege and my honor to serve as your settled minister here at First Universalist. I use they, them pronouns. Leading worship with me today is Dolores DeLumba, who uses she, her pronouns as our worship associate. Dr. Brock Chesvold, our fabulous music director, using he, him pronouns. Jim Milch and Michael Scott providing tech support, he, him respectfully, and Karen Labraco, she, her. Thank you so much for holding down our online ministry team this morning, Karen. If you are here for the first time, welcome you. Thank you for making your way to our worshiping community. Visitors form can be found in the chat for our folks online. And there's also a visitors form that can be found in the pews by scanning the QR code, either in your pews or in your order of service. Please fill out this form so we can offer you a welcome beyond this worship service. We offer a U and U session on the third Sunday of every month following the service in the back of the sanctuary, a time to ask questions and to learn a little bit more about First Universalist. The next UU and U is on December 18th. Before we take a moment to turn to our neighbors, let us take a moment to turn towards the camera here in our sanctuary space, this green camera right up here up front, and to offer a wave to greet our online worshiping community. We're glad you're here with us this morning. We're grateful you're able to join us online from wherever you are. Fantastic. If you are online, we invite you to pop into the chat to offer a greeting. And if you are here at First Universalist, let us take a moment to turn to our neighbor this morning and offer a greeting with one another. Let out a shriek. I love when it's time to greet one another and we let out a yelp of joy, a shriek for joy. What a delight. I'm sorry to have to interrupt your good conversations and to bring you back for us to be able to sing. But we are going to sing hymn number 389, Gathered Here. And what I'll invite us to do is let's sing it twice through in unison, and then we'll sing it twice through in a round. Now, I would usually divide us down the aisle, but what I'm going to say is if you are in this section and if you're on the end, would you please sing with our second folks over here? So I see some nods. So would you please come in second, and we'll start with this section once our round gets started. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here.
We've all recovered from Thanksgiving? As a child, I grew up, not the mic, okay. Thank you for signaling. As a child, I grew up believing the story of Thanksgiving as the origin of a happy, peaceful holiday with Native Americans and pilgrims gathering together to enjoy the harvest. As an adult, I celebrated Thanksgiving not only as an enjoyable feast, but also as a time to remember and be thankful for all the blessings for which I was grateful. I truly believed in the myth and thought of Thanksgiving as a happy time for everyone. But I didn't know the dark side of the holiday. I never stopped to think of what Thanksgiving might mean to the descendants of Native Americans. Frank James, a Wampanoag tribal member who was invited to speak at the 350th commemoration of the feast in 1970, wanted to share the feelings of his people to dispel the myth. His speech was printed in several papers across the country, but he was not allowed to give his speech at the ceremony. Contrary to expectations, advanced copies of his speech did not praise the pilgrims and was therefore deemed inappropriate. In his speech, Frank James called Thanksgiving a day of mourning. He spoke of atrocities committed, graves despoiled, Wampanoag sold as slaves in Europe, and diseases spread that had caused the great dying. For him, the first Thanksgiving was in 1637, declared by the Puritans, not the Pilgrims, and was said to have been held to celebrate the massacre of over 700 Indigenous men, women, and children. Out of this pain and darkness came a union of many tribes and supporters, and the observation of Thanksgiving as a day of mourning. At Coles Hill in Plymouth, Massachusetts on Thanksgiving 1970, the first day of mourning was held. There, he declared that our spirit refuses to die. We stand tall and proud and will right the wrongs we have allowed to happen to us. A few days ago, on the 52nd anniversary of the day of mourning, his granddaughter led the ceremony. She said, "We are not vanishing. We are not conquered. We are as strong as ever." As Unitarian Universalists, may we continue to stand tall and be as strong as ever as we continue to seek the truth and help to right the wrongs. And now, knowing that there is light after darkness, let us come to worship together. Oh, sorry, it's this way. As Christogolia comes to light the chalice, may we recite our chalice words together. May we be a people welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we preserve our community. Please stand as we recite our affirmation of faith. In rising in body or spirit. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is a sacrament, and service is a prayer. To dwell together in peace to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus we covenant with each other and with all. We are so blessed. We gather together in peace and in safety. Some of us may be close to people who live in fear or even terror. All of us are concerned about those who may be targeted because they are different and can easily be singled out for harassment or persecution. Through our church, we do whatever we can to support justice and equity. You are invited to drop an offering in the offering basket or to give online by scanning the QR code in your pew. For folks online, please click the link in the Zoom chat window to give to First Universalist Church. You can also send a check in the physical mail. Thank you for your generosity.
Our story this morning is called In a Dark, Dark Cave by Eric Hoffman. And it's a beautiful story about imagination and childhood imagination. So here we see some of the stars of our story. It's a bit of a poem. The pale moon glows as a cold wind blows through a dark, dark cave. Bats in flight disappear from sight in a dark, dark cave. Something crawls up and down the walls of a dark, dark cave. Shining eyes, what occupies this dark, dark cave? Giant paws stretch out their claws in a dark, dark cave. Wild beasts howl as they stomp and prowl in this dark, dark cave. What's that? A light. Who comes in sight of this dark, dark cave? Roar! That's too loud, kids. Find a quiet game. The baby's sleeping. Sorry, Dad. Two horses run in the bright, bright sun to a blanket barn wearing manes of yarn, playing happily in what used to be a dark, dark cave. Rev Michelle chose this story for us this morning as a way to explore dark space as imaginative and as a place to get to pretend. And so I love that these kids transform these two spaces, the same space, into two different places, and the imagination that exists in dark space. So if any of our young people would like to make their way up to our Sunday school morning activities, you're certainly welcome to do so. You can also stay here if you want to stay here. Perfectly fine, whatever you'd like to do this morning. We're glad you're with us. I'll invite you now into this reverent time of sharing the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can listen from a heart-centered place by placing your hand over your heart, a reminder of our center, a way to connect us no matter where we are, whether you're joining us online or here in the sanctuary, just ground in this heart place. As Dolores places stones into a bowl, I will read aloud the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. All are also invited online to share your joys and sorrows in the chat so we can hear from you. This morning, we share both a sorrow and a joy from Christine Dutton. A sorrow that my mother died yesterday, and I feel gratitude for her release. And a joy for being back home in this church where I found my spiritual community. Welcome home. A joy from Marty Eggers. I had a great time in Massachusetts for Thanksgiving with one of my sons and his family. We'll drop one stone into the bowl for the collective joys that this holiday brings for us of this past week. And we'll drop one stone into the bowl for the collective sorrow and the mourning that Dolores mentioned this morning, that for so many this day is a reminder of pain and harm, genocide and erasure. And we will hold one final intention for all the joys and sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May all be held in the heart of love this morning. Dear ones, I invite you now into a time of prayer and meditation. I invite you to get comfortable wherever you are, to allow yourself to sit back into your chair, your pew, your couch. And I'll invite you, if it feels comfortable to you, to close your eyes, to really go into this dark space available always to us behind our eyelids, a space of calm, soothing, and just take a moment to connect with your breath. A meditation in the dark. Open us up to the dark, to the evenings of rest, to the seasons slowing down, a time for contemplation. Open us up to the dark, to dream space, to imagination, to the divine at work in what we cannot see, a discovery of what is possible without the light. Open us up to the dark, available to us always behind the eyelids, the deep breath, the pause, the recalibration, a moment of listening and coming back to center. Open us up to the dark, to what happens below the surface, to networks of relationships underground, to new growth and nourishment, to the processes still happening below the frozen earth when so much seems still and stagnant. This season of growing darkness is a gift. Let our hearts be thankful. Let our spirits be full. Let our minds be cleared. Let our bodies be rested. We pray this morning to open us up to the dark. Amen. Blessed be and may it be so. And let us continue in our time to join in some sacred silence and stillness with one another. In a spirit of gratitude, honoring the abundance we receive from the gifts of others, let us join in our hymn of contemplation, hymn number 402, From You I Receive. We will sing it 3 times through. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. I hear a call in this season to redefine what darkness means in our church and in the West. Darkness as a source of creativity and lightness as a source of positivity has been a duality prominent in the Western world, mainly kept alive through the Christian church. Today, we explore darkness as a creative force, darkness as a generative space and state of being. So much is created in the dark, a part of our lives and our world worth examining fully. This season begins our seasonal theme of, or this Sunday, begins our seasonal theme of underground. And I wanted to take this first Sunday to look at what is created in darkness, what is imagined underground, what grows beneath the surface. Our story this morning highlights the imaginative space of the dark in that dark, dark cave that then turns into a horse barn and may just be a nuisance for the parents that are around. To take this theme a bit further, I want to explore 3 examples this morning. 1 cultural, 1 earth-based, because I really couldn't get away from it, and 1 a little closer to home, more personal. This past fall brought the long-awaited release of the book, Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey, the NAP bishop who has been creating and curating the NAP ministry for the last decade. Has anybody here ever heard of her work or heard of the NAP ministry? What a treat. All right. She hosts installations in spaces publicly where she opens a way towards resting. Rooms full of pillows and soft blankets with gentle music in the background, very soft lighting and herbal tea. Sounds good, right? Much of what she has written about is the need to divest from grind culture, conditions created by capitalism where we are encouraged to go, go, go all the time. To divest from that space and to reclaim dream space, space stolen from her enslaved African ancestors as their bodies were treated as labor and property, where they were forced to work usually 20 hours per day in awful conditions. In her book, Rest is Resistance, which I actually brought my copy in case anybody would like to look at it. In her book, I have been learning about the Maroons, enslaved Africans who intentionally resisted in enslavement, who lived in caves and dark spaces where they could not be found in order to not be part of this horrendous system. I am learning about these folks anew because of the ways US history was taught to me. These stories are so often not told. We learn about individuals who resisted enslavement at great cost. I did not learn about whole communities living outside the system of enslavement in these so-called United States. It is inspiring to know that people resisted as families, as communities, and found safe space in unseen places to not have to work oneself beyond human capacity. A dark, dark cave as a safe harbor, as a place to imagine and dream of a different world. Her book focuses on slowing down and resting, which is extremely challenging to me. And I imagine I am not alone in this room. Her charge to all of us is to resist the headlong tumble into grind culture and productivity that so many of us have been socialized into. She challenges us to not just rest so we can recharge ourselves for more productivity later, but rather to rest as our divine right, because we are enough just as we are. And there is deep power in our dreaming, in resting. Underground, what is seen, exists our subconscious. In the darkness of our resting, our bodies heal. Our brains are repaired. Our dreams are allowed to run free. Under the surface of our outside world is this dream space, room to imagine, room to make sense of our life, space to connect with the ancestors. We cannot be imaginative nor creative if we are not resting. If we do not travel to the underground of our psyche, we cannot fully live in our waking hours. To rest feeds our spirit. And in the dark world of sleep and rest and dreams, we are renewed and we emerge ready to imagine and to be creative. The second example I could think of comes from the natural world. The networks of mycelia below the surface that lead to mushrooms growing. Trees whose root systems are connected, shoring up resources to trees in their network with an infection or in danger. Trees who even communicate underground, as written about in The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wohlenben. The seeds whose germination takes place when they are frozen in the earth first. So many creative endeavors below the surface. It brings the image to mind that I've seen in many movies and TV shows where the camera pans below the grass through the soil, and we see bones and root systems and some of the little tunnels that animals make. Trees are created in the dark, as well as our food sources. Animals live in the dark, sometimes so much so that they are unable to see when they emerge above the surface, yet have special capabilities to feel their way through the tunnels that they create. Other senses developed. How creative. Many of the foods, of course, that we eat are nourished underground and have to be plucked up out of the soil. The potatoes, the onions, the garlic, which must be pulled from the soil in order to be enjoyed. And since we're on the topic of food, I imagine you can think of other foods that are nourished in the dark. Perhaps some that ended up on your table this past week. Any examples? Any things that come to mind? Sweet potatoes, Beets. Oh, yes, I love beets. Carrots. I made a celeriac last week. That was a whole new endeavor. Delicious. Coffee hour will be after the service in case you're getting hungry. A reminder that we are connected to the creative forces underground in the soil. That darkness has a role in creating sustenance for our bodies. We explore the underground as creative space because so much of our view from the standpoint of human beings can be fear of the unknown. One of the most fearful tropes in horror movies and television shows is to be buried alive. It brings a cringe to mind. Yeah, I even heard it. Ooh. The heart recoils from the sheer terror of it. And yet, this is not all that happens, of course, beneath the surface. What happens in the dark, what happens where it cannot be seen, can be beautiful, can be creative, can be inspiring. Whenever someone or something dies and goes into the earth and its creatures utilize that energy and that life force to create soil. A creative endeavor in and of its own, our bodies becoming the source of life and sustenance for the plants growing and the animals burrowing and the food we enjoy. Darkness is not something to be feared, but rather to be embraced. But do not hear me this morning that the darkness and the underground is a space where only positive things happen. This is not a good vibes only sermon this morning. We have to take a more nuanced approach to what happens underground. And while I applaud the Maroons, whose efforts led to a freedom resistance movement, to cultures created around resistance and a refusal to comply, to the underground movements that we ourselves here housed when we housed a medic triage site in the wake of the death of Daniel Prude and the protests that followed, there are also underground movements whose ultimate messages are opposed to human freedom, whose aim is to limit and oppress and control. I know we can bring to mind many examples throughout time and into the present day, and this is where I'm going to ask us to turn our attention to the personal. Within Unitarian Universalism, there is an underground movement growing, sparked and inspired by the idea that the anti-racism work and the counter-oppressive work that the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations is doing is in direct opposition to one's own search for truth and meaning. The people in this community claim to speak on behalf of one's right to make one's own choices about what anti-racism looks like, which doesn't sound that harmful on the surface. But if we look underground, these folks in the Gadfly movement continue the harmful and conservative rhetoric of seeing anti-racism efforts and the UUA's work to put more people of color in power as PCism and the creation of an orthodox in which no one is able to disagree. This approach does not acknowledge that the group largely leading these efforts are white people. In fact, they have branded themselves the UUMUAC, the Unitarian Universalist Multiracial Unity Action Council. The movement was started by Reverend Dr. Todd Eckloff, who distributed his book, The Gadfly Papers, at the 2019 General Assembly in Spokane, Washington, in which he questioned many of the UUA's decisions to move towards becoming a more anti-racist institution. And while I cannot give you all the history here, I will say this is an underground movement within Unitarian Universalism for which I have some concern. Our presidential search committee put forth its candidate for UUA president this past week, Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt. It's exciting. She has previously served as interim president following the resignation of one of our UUA presidents. She is extremely qualified. The Gadfly movement is seeking to undermine her candidacy and possibly put forth their own candidate by petition. A few of their ministers, including Reverend Dr. Todd Eckloff, have had their fellowship removed for not engaging in accountability processes for the harm that they are doing. This split one of our congregations in Spokane, Washington, where Reverend Dr. Eckloff was serving. There are now two churches in Spokane: the church that voted to keep him as their minister and the church that disagreed with this decision. What I see here is a resistance to change and a resistance to the new vision of Unitarian Universalism currently being birthed among us. I see a movement which seeks to divide rather than to stay in the hard conversations and accept that it's okay to disagree, but one's disagreement cannot lead to harm on an individual and systemic level. I have not talked about this with you all thus far. This started in 2019 more vocally, and I've kept this information largely underground in my ministry with you all because it has not felt relevant. And quite frankly, I believe that if I ignored this movement, it might just fade into the background. But it appears that as more changes are being considered, as a revision of our 7 principles is being considered, as our denomination is looking to change its institutional practices to be more in line with the values we say we believe in, as we explore the possibility of an 8th principle firmly committed to fighting racism, this gadfly movement grows more vocal, more resistant. What I desired to keep underground must be brought forward into our collective consciousness to be viewed and seen. I invite all of you to do your research and to find out what you can about these changes in our denomination and about this underground movement growing up amongst us. What goes underground is that which folks feel they need to protect and keep safe. It is a creative space that asks us to reflect on what is being created there. Like the children in our story, what can be found in a dark, dark cave is something wondrous. And sometimes the monsters we'd rather not see nor look at. Either way, the underground can be space to reckon with what can be imagined, what can be created, and sometimes even who we are. Now, if there are any Star Wars people here, I remember that scene in The Empire Strikes Back where Luke enters a cave to face his enemy and Darth Vader appears. A great example of evil equated with darkness, by the way, who Luke fights only to reveal himself behind the black mask. What remains underground is sometimes not pretty, but it is worth taking a look at. I imagine that the Maroons who had to go underground to resist enslavement would have preferred a world where they did not have to go underground for their survival. And I know that I wish for that world today. And I imagine many of us here do. Yet here we are, taking an honest look at what is created underground, honoring the beauty and the honesty of the dark. My wish for you this week is to let the darkness call you towards your creative self. May you find space to rest, to resist grind culture, and to be in dream space. May you honor the growth happening in the earth all around you, the underground networks that cannot be seen. May you take an honest and a researched approach to the underground movements springing up close to home and across our world. And may we remain committed to unlearning darkness as a truly negative force and to see where darkness is a divine space for creativity. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. Dear ones, as we prepare our hearts to close our service this morning, our final hymn is hymn number 18, What Wondrous Love. It's one of mine and Brock's favorite hymns. And so please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing What Wondrous Love. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's ground, friends to me gathered round. Oh my soul, friends to me gathered round. Oh my soul, to love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends who pain and sorrow mend, with thanks unto the end I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end I will sing. Please remain standing as we extinguish our chalice flame this morning, and let us read together the words printed on the screen and in your order of service. May we extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. Dear ones, as we close our service, I invite you again to place a hand over your heart and to take a look around at the love and friends gathered here, those who surround you, who are here with you on this journey towards spirit, towards living. Dear ones, as you go forth today, may you allow the creative force of darkness to call you. May we embrace the dark. May we find ourselves there. May we look ourselves in the mirror. May we know who we are and express who we are in these dark spaces and in this dark time. I am wishing you rest. I am wishing you love. I am wishing you deep breaths, which come fully from knowing that we ourselves are loved. So may you know that you are loved, and may you go and be that love to whomever you meet. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so.